it's an interesting process that we are seeing, because every morning we have seen the same, process, and we've seen, what we see is the cars driving, the military, the pomp and the ceremony and everything that happens. But behind the scenes, there's so much tradition and culture that's happening that we perhaps are not even aware of. Perhaps you can talk us through this. We've seen Mandela standing there every single morning to welcome the body. We've seen the elders of the clans. Talk us through what actually happens.
Yes, Leanne, what a befitting honor for Madiba, this icon. Here you're talking about somebody with such a rich identity. You're talking about the father, you're talking about an international figure, you're talking about the first president of a democratic South Africa, but also talking about a chief. You are talking about somebody who grew up within a clan. Now, here in this funeral, we see also preparation, interface between modernity and tradition. The presence of Chief Zwelivelile Mandela there signifies that culture. For instance, in African societies, somebody has departed is regarded as still alive.
Yes.
The significance of him standing there is that every time he's briefing him, he gets a briefing as to what's going to be the next step now.
All right. So every time he's talking to his grandfather the whole way?
Every time he's talking to his grandfather, what is going to be the next step? Because this goes to the belief that there must be somebody who knows.
Yeah.
Somebody who's related to the person, somebody also who's close to the person, a member of the family, who must take him along every time and every step, even when the president departs tomorrow, to Eastern Cape.
Yeah.
Somebody must come and say, we are now taking you. Now we're taking you to the Eastern Cape.
Yeah.
And then even when he's being taken to taken home, even when he arrives home, somebody must say, we have now arrived at home, and then what is going to happen and so forth. Who is here?
Yeah. And I'm going to continue this conversation with you. Predominantly that individual would be Mandela, and the responsibility would fall on Mandela's shoulders. See, he is talking to him the whole time.
He's talking to him the whole time.
Tomorrow when he's flying, when he arrives at home, the whole time. I'm going to explore this. I've got my producers in my ear just shouting at me, because we've had a very major accident in Cape Town on the N1, and unfortunately 5 people have lost their lives in this particular accident. So we just want to give you more details, and we'll continue this conversation in the Johannesburg studio. Mariska, you're in Cape Town. Can you give us some more details about this accident? Mariska, are you able to hear us? Can you give us some more information on this accident that was reported earlier in Cape Town? All right, it unfortunately looks like Mariska can't hear us at this stage, but as soon as we do get that link up, we will cross to her again. Advocate, let's continue our conversation. So, this is something that we've seen, and on the first day, it was a lot longer though, because now the process is quite quick. When Tata's body arrives, you see the family there. They walk him up. Obviously, they talk to him, and it's open straight away. But on that first day, the whole family was there. And they had a private ceremony. Can you perhaps take us behind those closed doors? What traditionally takes place at that time when the body is first brought to the family, when that public viewing is about to take place?
Obviously, certain traditional activities take place, and some of them are very private.
Yeah.
But of course, these are the traditions according to Tembu clan. When they receive him, but also certain rituals take place. I mean, usually people go to the kraal, more especially the elderly. There's a significance of a kraal, even when some people are staying in today's suburbs. They do something like a kraal.
Yeah.
This is where it is believed that ancestors are, or ancestors reside. and then people will go there, maybe in the morning. As early as 5 o'clock, certain things have been happening.
Yeah.
We may not be aware about those, but that's really the kind of cultural tradition and identity take place. And obviously the Tembu clan, where Chief Dalpunga comes from, they're very, very they uphold their culture and their custom.
Yeah.
That is why, for instance, Mandela, even you go to Mvezo, even in the building there, that multi-purpose center there, he made it a point that there must be a kraal. And the significance of a kraal in the cow dung in African societies, remember, these are the people who will say that even if you have a car, you are poor without a cow.
Yeah.
And so forth. Nobody listens to you, and so forth. So those are the cultural beliefs that actually must take place. Even when we will see this up until the end, in Kono, it will continue. So what is important about this, Leanne, is that through this funeral, cultural or this cultural identity of African or Africans, or who we are, our own identity, has now come to a global platform.
Yeah.
That indeed we have our own cultures, we have our own identities. These have been happening in many families, but now we are talking about an international icon. That's why now they come to the fore. Otherwise, people practice these belief systems, these cultural rights, and all this, this heritage tapestry. It takes place every day. What is important about Madiba that he never alienated himself from his people. Yeah. He was always with his people, and he practiced what his people. Because there are people who, when all of a sudden they become important people, they become detached from their own
their culture and their roots.
Culture. He was never detached.
No,
he actually right through. That is why, even fortunately, my home is not far from where the president was come from.
Yeah.
Just 5 kilometers.
Amazing.
And even when he came, this first call was to talk to the elders of the community. When he speaks to the elders, he speaks to the elders respecting the seniority of the elders.
Yeah.
So the president in him goes out, and he really forgets about that for a moment. He concentrates on that.
Okay, Advocate, I'm going to continue to pick your brain about all of this and get these pearls of wisdom out, and especially talking about the process tomorrow and the funeral on Sunday, perhaps just to throw forward. But let's try again with Mariska and see if that link is up and running, and to see if that those details about the accident on the N1 can be given to us. Mariska, any more details that you have for us?
Yes, Leanne, at this stage we only know that at least 5 people have died in those 2 horrific accidents on the N1. The N1, of course, at this stage still closed, and it will take at least 4 or 5 hours to clear up the accident scene. As we understand from Mr. Kenny Africa, the Chief of Traffic in the Western Cape, he told us earlier that people are still trapped in those 2 trucks that collided. Unfortunately, the trucks have burnt out, and rescue personnel cannot get close to the 2 trucks until they've cooled down so that they can actually work there. But to speak more about the safe travel of people to and from the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, we have Mr. Justice Marobele of the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association, one of the biggest in the Western Cape, to tell us about his association's readiness for the festive season. Mr. Marobele, first of all, are you ready to handle the volumes of people that are coming through this weekend?
Yes, first of all, let me greet you, ma'am. We are ready as much as we can, but only just small problem or disappointment from government side, where the government did apply something that is called the administration mark, which can maybe reject or oppose when the member or go to renew the license of the vehicle, as well as the transportation licensing board, where they changed the system of issuing those permits, which were given to the taxi operators to transport the people from Western Cape to Eastern Cape. Except those problems, we are ready, actually.
We've heard Mr. Kenny Africa saying this morning that they are quite tired of this thing of people driving when they're tired. They see it a lot with taxis, and he said that they want to work with unions to ensure that especially the drivers adhere to the call to rest, especially on the long road. What are you doing from your side to ensure that drivers adhere to this call to take it easy on the road?
We have arranged with the taxi operators or the owners that we must look after our drivers. They must drive certain hours, then they get rest, they get shower, and then from there they continue with the journey. We don't want them to drive from here to Eastern Cape straightly. We want them to drive certain hours to get a rest, and then if they come that side, they used to just drop and come back. Now we have suggested that they must drop and get a rest, then he can continue with the journey after some hours, not to drop and come back to Cape Town.
And that was Mr. Justice Marubele of the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association. And we're also going to have a very quick word with Mr. Martin Tomela of the Gabi Bus Operators Association. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about what bus operators are doing to ensure that people travel safe. Mr. Tomela, good morning to you. What measures are in place to ensure that people are safe on the road?
We are ready to accommodate any volumes. We have working committees that is responsible for safety issues. We are ready for anything.
Okay, there we heard it from Mr. Martin Tomela of the Gabi Bus Operators Association. En ons kom lewendig na julle toe van die Joe Gabi terminus waar busse en taxis vanaf sal vertrek om veral na die Ooskaap te reis, en ons verwag omtrent 25,000 mense behoort hulle pad huis toe te vind oor die volgende 3 of 4 dae.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks very much, Mariska, on that one. Yulisa is in Kunu, where the funeral is going to be taking place on Sunday. She's actually joined by Tony Yengeni. Yulisa, a very good morning to you. All right, those are our shots from Kunu, and you managed to glimpse the corner of Yulisa's head there, but we will certainly get to that interview in a short while. But let's continue our discussion about traditions and really moulding the state funeral and the traditions together, because I'm finding this exceptionally interesting. Just the process that's going to happen tomorrow now, because this what you're seeing on your screen right now is happening right now. This is the body lying in state, and you saw all the traditions that have been played out for you with Mandela welcoming his grandfather, telling him where he is, speaking to him the entire time. The advocate with us is giving us all of the details as to what's happening behind the scenes at this time. So this is another process that's going to take place, and this is going to happen tomorrow. The presidency says that Nelson Mandela's remains will be transported to the Eastern Cape on Saturday from the Air Force Base at Waterkloof near Pretoria, where the ruling party will bid Madiba farewell. The SANDF will take charge of this leg of the funeral. A military guard of honor will welcome the remains, which will be draped in the national flag. Upon arrival at the airport, the SANDF contingent will perform the ceremonial removal of the body from the aircraft. The coffin will be placed on a gun carriage and then transported into a hearse. The SANDF will sound the national anthem while the guard of honor will present arms and salute. Now, the body will then be transported to the family home in Kunu, where the Tembu community will conduct a traditional ceremony. And this is the ceremony that I want to talk about now. But I think before we talk about that traditional ceremony, I think our link is up with you, Lisa, who's joined by Tony Yengeni in Kunu, where all of this is going to be taking place. So, Yulisa, it's over to you.
Thank you, and the sun is coming up in Kunu. Whoever thought, because in the past few days there's been downpours of rain. Kuthiwa ke abayaziyo bathi iqamagu livumile. Abanye basixelela ukuba ingcwaba lendoda lisendleleni, kodwa abantu baseMpuma Koloni apho nam ndisuka khona bathi uTata Mandela chose to come here and be laid to rest. Ukuba imvula iphinde yana kwakhona akho umuntu ukhalazayo okanye ukhathazekayo ngesuthu bathi mushututswelapile. Of course we have the NEC member of the ANC uTatu Tony Yengeni, who's been here for a couple of days to chat with us about first the mood in these areas, the rural areas. In Gauteng, the celebrations, people are singing, celebrating Tatu Madiba's life, but this side it seems to be different.
We must appreciate that there's a vast difference between rural and urban areas. In the urban areas, everybody is rushing, moving around, running, singing, and so on and so on. But in the rural areas, it's more laid back. People take their time. And enye into ke esintwini xa kukho umuntu oswelekileyo osishiyileyo kuyazilwa, so abantu yonke into bebeyenza ngaphambili bayayiyeka bahlale phansi bazole, so that kusetyenzwe kakuhle. Nomuntu ofuna ukulwa kuthiwa no lo mlolo sawubona emva komsebenzi. So unyanisile abantu balapha bazolile bazilile, siyayibona sonke lo nto leyo.
Izolo bekhe wathi bekukho i-memorial service apha, khawusinike nje umfanekiso kwenzeka ntoni kanye kwenzeke ntoni?
Ya bikhona umthandazo bukhona izolo eCicirha. Inkokheli ze-ANC bezikhona zonke apho, sikhokelwe ngunobhala jikelele uComrade Gwede Mantashe umqwathi, nabantu balapha ke bebephume ngomzi ugcwele indlu iphuphuma, kuculwa ke kuthandazwa yonke into ibisenzeka phaya, ne-television ke bezikhona. But ke bingumthandazo omhle kakhulu, inkosi zikhona, abefundisi bekhona, omama bevathile, i-Women's League ANC ikhona ize ngamandla, so bekumnandi apho, abantu bebhiyozela ubomi bukaTata Mandela.
But Tony, while every one of us the world over sithi uTata Mandela belongs to us, kodwa abalapha abantu eQunu banelunda ngakumbi ngoba bamaze seyinkwenkwanyana.
Abantu balapha banalo ilunda, kufuneka babe nalo ngoba uMandela inkaba yakhe ilapha, ayikho eGauteng, ayikho eLondon, ilapha eQunu. Abantu balapha banelunda ngaye, and bayiviyela into kubana ungunyana walapha, and bayamclaima uMandela. But you see, I think it's also important to make the point that uMandela comes from somewhere. He didn't fall from the skies. Mandela was born here, was brought up by people here in this place. But also Mandela was brought up in the ANC, in the best traditions of the African National Congress. What you see is a product of years of nurturing by the leadership of the African National Congress.
Usitsho kodwa uba noxa engutata woxolo kodwa engumntu olwa kakhulu way back then.
I think that's an important point to stress, that Mandela was a man of peace. Mandela would reconcile enemies and is a shining example in that regard. But you must balance that with the fact that Mandela was a fighter. Mandela didn't shy away from a good fight. That is why he was the first volunteer-in-chief of the volunteers of the ANC who defied apartheid laws in 1952. He led from the front. Didn't only organize them and mobilize them, but he was the first to sit on a whites-only bench, for example. In 1961, he was the first commander-in-chief of Mkondo Wesizwe. Okay? Even in prison, he used to lead other comrades in the fight against draconian prison conditions. And of course, he was the first to sit down with the enemy and to have discussions with them. So it's a very important dichotomy of this personality called Nelson Mandela. So you can't emphasize one point over the other.
While the funeral is going to be an intimate affair, siyaqonda ukuba kuthiwa kuzawuvalwa indlela abantu mabazama ukhawuleza ingakumbi eMonti. Khawusixelele more about that.
Where indlela zizawuvalwa ngakumbi kusuka eMonti kuza eMthatha ngomgqibelo nangecawe. Khona ke amaxesha azawupapashwa nendawo apho indlela ezawuvalwa khona ethubeni. So kubalekile into kubana abantu bayiqonde lonto. Abantu abasoka kwezinye indawo bayazi into kubana funeka babe kwelicala in good time. Esinye isicelo ke sisokubana ngomso xa umzimba ufika kaTata uMandela abantu ukusuka airport uyotsho eMthatha nokusuka eMthatha uzotsho eQunu abantu mabame apha endleleni icanga kwendlela bamnike andazi ibeka ntoni ngesilungu ngesixhosa but ke bamnike sort of a guard of honor. And we are saying that people should not necessarily inconvenience themselves by hiring buses and taxis and to do that. Umuntu usuke elalini yakhe awutshe endleleni, you know, njalo njalo ukusukela airport uzotshe eQunu.
Ebutheni kokugqibela nje njengoba sihleli apha kule mpolo yaseQunu apho uTata uMandela azawulala khona kwikhaya lakhe lokugqibela. For you, you have been fortunate enough to meet Utata Nelson Mandela many times. Any particular memory that you can share with South Africans?
Well, one day Tata Mandela called me, says, "Tony, where are you?" I said, "Tata, I'm in Cape Town." He says, "I'm going to send my driver to pick you up, take you to Air Force Base, Esterplaat. The plane is waiting for you." And that's what happened. An hour later or two, I was in Pretoria, Waterkloof Air Force Base. His other driver was waiting for me. Took me to him, found him at home. He says to me, "Thank you for coming. The meeting that you arranged for next week with the Chief of the National Defence Force is over." I said, "But Tata, it can't. Because you see, when you arrange a meeting in Parliament, you go through a certain procedures." He looked at me, he says, "I don't think you understand. That meeting is not going to take place." It's only then, when he said it the second time, that I realized he's not asking me, he's giving me an order. I stood up, I saluted him, went back into the car, back to the airport, back to Cape Town.
Great memories indeed that you have of Utata Nelson Mandela. But I do know that I said this is the last one, but I just remembered that in fact you met with the traditional leaders as well. Tell us about that a bit, please.
You see, abathembu inkosi zalapha ziyamhlonipha kakhulu uTata uMandela. And azifuni into kubana xa kusenziwa lo msebenzi kubekho izinto ezawuphazamisana namasiko nezithethe akwantu. Though government inguye ophethe lo mcimbi, it's a state funeral, but the traditional leaders have impressed on us that that must not temper with how they would want to give Mandela a proper farewell.
Manisbabe ngazibini kubuthoni yengeni NEC member of the African National Congress. Siza kuwe siphuma ngqo eQunu ekhayeni likaTata uMadiba apha zawulala khona. Back to you in the studio, Leanne.
So thank you very much. Unbelievable listening to Tony Yengeni reminiscing and just also talking about some of the traditions and cultures of the Abu Tambo clan. And I've got Advocate Sonwabile Mkachwa in studio with me, who's been doing exactly the same thing. And we sort of ended off our discussion, and we're going to start wrapping it up shortly. But we just sort of looking behind the scenes now. Everything you're going to see is part of the state funeral, but behind there, the scenes is also a traditional funeral. So, you know, we got to the point where the body arrives at Mthatha. It's then taken to the family residence. What happens when Madiba arrives home?
I think the Madiba family and the Madiba clan and the entire clan of Madiba will decide whether there's a need to further view the body, take into consideration that perhaps some people will not have been able to travel to Tshwane. It's the family and the Madiba clan will take that decision.
Yeah.
But also, they will be in a cow as well, I think, slaughtered. But according to African custom, that cow is a very special cow. More especially to an elderly man and the head of the family, like Madiba. And usually that cow is known even before, even when perhaps the old man is still alive. It's a very special cow. It's chosen, and then sometimes, in fact, that cow should come directly from the kraal, not just bought, you know, anywhere, because it's believed that this is a cow that is accompanying the old man, and even the shepherd who's looking after that cow, you know. That cow is special. They will talk to the cow itself, not, you know, to say that you have been chosen, and they will name usually that cow has a name.
Yeah. You
know that you are a special person. They will ululate to the cow, and because this cow accompanies a very important person, so the cow itself is special, and then when it is slaughtered, not everybody will slaughter the cow. And not anybody. It will be somebody chosen from the Madiba clan.
Yeah.
You know, usually there is somebody called Intlabi. Intlabi meaning that this is a person who will put the first brick on the cow. And usually, as you know, that when the cow bellows, it also means that, you know, the ancestors have agreed.
Yeah.
And then all those rituals will take place, and certain rituals, of course, some of them private, in the private space, not just publicly. We all know anything that actually would happen, but you know, every thing will happen according to Madiba and Tembu tradition.
Yeah.
And then behind the scene, there will be a lot of them. There are a lot of them that we have not seen, you know, as well.
No, I imagine we're going to be introduced to them all now as we enter into his homeland of the Eastern Cape. We're running out of time as well in a very fast way. Time is the greatest enemy of ours. But I think what's important to end of our interview is to talk about, we all talk about heritage. But, you know, you, of course, being the CEO of the Heritage Council, and we want to talk about the legacy of Nelson Mandela and this global legacy. What do you think the legacy is going to be? And everything you've been talking to us this morning, intertwining the culture and heritage that you say Madiba was so proud about until the day he died. What do you think that legacy is?
The Heritage Council has just defined what heritage means during this September. That heritage is not just about us going back, but it's us going back, but in order to educate the current and future generation, but also to ensure that we use our own identity for nation building. I think what is important is that the memory of Madiba is now going to be part of the memory of the world. Values that actually shaped him, the values of sacrifice, justice, and so forth. So what's important, therefore, is that all the sites that our own icon Madiba depicts will be preserved, and that also people you have an opportunity as well for re-education. But also what is also important is the whole question of best practice, because heritage is not just about us going back. The best practice, what is best practice? You know, and then Never it has happened that we become part of the globe like this after this funeral.
Yeah.
And we become part of the globe. Ubuntu, for instance. I mean, President Obama spoke about this, that there's something called Ubuntu. Fortunately, the Research Council honored Madiba in his program of restoration of values of Ubuntu, because Ubuntu is our own global footprint. And it's about, us as South Africans. It's about us. So that one is so. The fact that we're so delighted that the Research Council to have honored Madiba, besides other, along with other statesmen like Fidel Castro and so forth. I mean, when we honored Fidel Castro after him, they went to Google what Ubuntu is.
Yeah.
And they said that, look, this is the only thing that as Cubans defines us. This is with greatest honor to Fidel Castro. So the personal way of this icon really reestablishes us to the world and for the coming generations. I would say that South Africa will never be the same.
Yeah.
This greatest respect that will earn to the world, but I think we must use it so that we don't just celebrate this heritage tapestry, but to say that what it means to us, currently, let's reshape the world.
Yeah.
Let's establish our own presence, to the global community. And that indeed we are there to be counted. I think that this is going to be a very prosperous country.
That's the heritage. I think we'll sum it up in one word. Thank you so much for joining us. Ubuntu, the heritage and the legacy that perhaps could be left behind by our late Nelson Mandela. National Heritage Council CEO, Advocate Manwa Kotshwa, thank you very much for joining us here on this special broadcast.